Would you please take roll?
Ms. Atkins? Mr. Houston?
Here.
Mrs. McDaniel? Mrs. Peterson? Mr. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Wylage?
Here.
Mrs. Shuffle?
Here. Can I get a motion to approve the February 20, 2023 agenda?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Vote please.
Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Wylage?
Yes.
Mrs. Shuffle?
Yes. Commendation and good news.
So a few things. Well, right now we have kindergarten and preschool registration going on. We have quite a few kids that have already indicated they want to attend for next year. That's good. We had our show choir, went up to Spirit Lake this weekend, and they brought home another grand champion. I think that's 3 for the season, which is unprecedented for Lewis Central, so that's phenomenal. And then we have the big Clash of the Titans coming up here in just a little over a week, and so a week and a half, so that'll be a great event. Braylon Camrad lost in double overtime to the #1 ranked wrestler at state, and so he finished as this year's state runner-up. Considering he went in as the number 10th or 11th ranked wrestler, that's just speaks to the testament of Braylon and his fight and his will. So I want to say congratulations to him. We had our girls bowling team qualified for state, so they will be defending their team state title tomorrow in Waterloo. And then individual qualifiers for the girls were Alicia Oden. She won districts or regionals or whichever one it was to qualify. And then Kate Reed and Faith Renshaw also qualified. And for the boys, the team didn't qualify, but we had Caleb Renshaw qualified, and so he's going to bowl as well on Wednesday. So, and then last week we had Olivia Arkfeld was named the Runza Student of the Week. So that's kind of for the metro area. So that's pretty awesome. And did I miss one?
Caleb Podwalker.
Caleb what?
Caleb Podwalker?
Oh, is it Hodwalker? Oh, I must have just copied Renshaw. My fault.
Coach's name's Renshaw.
Oh, that must have been it. So my apologies, Caleb. So that's who qualified. Okay. Thanks for the correction there, Mr. Allen, the assist. And then I also have a quick presentation that Josh actually put together today. I know sometimes we talk about student activities or instruction, student assessment scores, but it's nice to take a look at some of the professional development activities that take place behind the scenes that help us to understand how we're so successful. Is there sound or is it not playing?
It's just music.
Okay.
So I intentionally muted it.
That was Mr. Barker that was presenting to middle school, the high school. So some of the conversations that took place today revolve around some vertical alignment pieces. So at Titan Hill, they were able to get the grade levels together, talk about some vertical alignment. At all levels, they talked some about PLC Plus, which is a district-wide initiative that we're doing right now to help us become more effective and more purposeful in our professional learning teams. And then they would take care of other individual school or content area based business as well. So they would have times to collaborate with their peers, talk about what they're doing in their classroom, making sure that they're on the same page, working through some questions or some providing or working through some possible solutions for issues that they're dealing with currently in their classroom. So it really is the whole purpose of this day is just to make our instruction that much better so we can teach students more effectively. So.
Anyone else? Commendation and good news? Okay. Comments and suggestions. This is the first time during our board meeting that anyone in the audience or anyone online, if they would like to type something in, can address the board. Hearing none, we'll go on to our consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Is there an updated personnel sheet?
There is. The additions are marked with asterisks.
He's gonna make it bigger for us. There we go. So a couple things to note. Dan Hoke used to be a teacher here a while ago. He then left. They kind of moved out of the area, and he's back. He's coaches football for us. Was a high school math teacher for us. Looking to become one of our middle school math teachers. So. Ryan Adkins is one that's on there. So Ryan was really the only applicant we had for the Performing Arts Center coordinator. And so the effective date was last week. I wanted him to start getting integrated with some of the performances we had. His position will primarily be to kind of care for and look after the performing arts areas, which would be the new theater, the black box, and the theater at the middle school as well. So making sure that he's helping to coordinate any activities that are going on in there, making sure that they have the items they need to perform in those areas, and then lining up any kind of outside groups that are available as well. So we did have that position posted since October. So kind of hoping to see if we had a couple more applicants, and we had one other, but they didn't return a phone call. So Ryan's a great addition, though. Ryan is he's got experience. He helped at the Iowa Western Theater for a few years. Obviously, from here, has a passion. So, and then the license transfers. Ms. Tresik she has kind of been wanting to move from the middle school to high school for a while, and so they were able to grant her request this year. And then that's about it.
Is there any discussion? Vote, please.
Mr. Stoffer?
No.
Mr. Wyledge?
Yes.
Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Sheffel?
Yes. Reports, 6.01, superintendent report.
My main report is going to be that right now we're working through some opportunities with some retirements that we had. So you guys know, Mr. Black retired, and then we also have Mrs. Teese retired, and so we are working through some possible solutions for how we're going to replace those positions. One of which is going to turn into kind of a dual role between special populations and an assistant principal down at Kreft, and so that is posted right now, and it'll be posted until we find somebody to take that position. We're still working on Dave is like a Swiss multi-tool, and there's literally only one of them that exists. So his is going to be much more complicated, take several positions, kind of some outside the box thinking to try to find somebody who can, or people who can help to fill that gap. So, so we're still kind of diving into that. We do have the facility guys are here today. Shive Hattery's here today. They'll give a presentation about some of the findings that they found last fall and winter when they came out and did their assessment of our facilities. And then moving forward, recommendation you'll see on the bottom there is that the presentation tonight's meant to be a shorter presentation about what they found within their facilities assessment. And then we need to get together at some point, and I'm going to put out the recommendation of next Tuesday night, the 28th, to do a board work session to discuss more in detail, not only the findings, but kind of where do we go from here? What is the next step as far as coming together with a plan to get some community insight as far as what they found, maybe some opportunities that are out there. Getting staff insight and just kind of trying to coordinate some of those next steps. So, anyway, so that would be what that board work session is for on the bottom. Other than that, we just continue to move forward. Dave's going to give a presentation today, kind of our mid-year report on our reading and math achievement data, and we are working through some scheduling things for next year. I've met with Iowa Western a couple different times. I'm going to be meeting with the preschool next year to see if there's maybe some possible changes for preschool next year or for really the elementary schools in general, to talk about maybe some scheduling pieces based on feedback that I've received from parents so far this year on just maybe some ideas to make things a little easier for them for pickup, drop off, those types of things. So those conversations are all taking place, and it's all because of the feedback we've received from parents. So anyway, that's kind of about it for my wrap up right now.
Okay. 6.02, mid-year report on K-8 reading and math achievement.
I'll turn it over to Mr. Black for this.
Okay. As you know, we do reading and math assessments at the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, and the end of the year using iReady, which is a computer adaptive test. We also use those same results for the Eli Law Compliance, which is for early literacy. It's a screening tool. So this is a look at our data from this year. Some things to remember. Most of the children in scores that you're going to see today were affected by COVID. We had a trimester off, basically, from instruction. So from grades 3 and up, all of those students had a full 6 or 9, 12, actually, it'd be 12 weeks. Yeah. Full 12 weeks at home, missing instruction. So our task has been to accelerate learning, to close that gap, to make up the difference. In fact, our mantra has been for many years to do more than that we want more than a year's worth of growth out of each and every child in the system. And you'll see some data today that really points to our doing just that. And even though the pandemic is somewhat over, the stresses of the pandemic, the mental health issues that are happening in society right now are still impacting our families and our staff, etc. So those are just some things to think about in the larger context of assessment. Reading and math assessment isn't the most important thing, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It is an important thing, but it's not the most important thing. So keeping that in consideration. You're going to see screen cut scores today. There's some definitions that I put on the screen for you. The iReady test is built, the growth scores you're going to see today are built on a typical year's worth of growth for a child who starts the race in a particular place. So if they are starting at an achievement level of, I'm going to make up some numbers for you now, of 6, they might grow at a different rate, expected different rate than a person who might start at a 12, right? So where they start the race kind of matters in terms of what we expect to see as a typical growth. We want every child to exceed that typical growth for a year on the iReady assessment. Another thing to remember is that the iReady assessment is criterion referenced, meaning that it's directly assessing content at the grade level. And it's very specifically tied to the standards. It's different than a norm reference test, which it may be or may not be tied to standards, but is designed to line the kids up in a line from best to worst. This isn't designed to do that. It's designed to say, how do you perform not against each other, but how do you perform compared to the standard at that grade level at that time, okay? Which is a fundamental difference in the test from this one to the ISASP, for example. You're also going to see some growth expectations that talk to stretch growth as opposed to typical growth. And stretch growth is designed to make up that difference, make up those gaps for kids. This graphic is very helpful in putting that idea of grade level relative placement in perspective for you. What we really want is all those students to be in those green categories, right? It would be great if they all could be. Another thing to consider when we start looking at placements is how much support a student needs to succeed at a particular level. So you'll see Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 placements referred to as well in this. A Tier 3 placement represents a student who has significant need and significant supports that need to be provided to them to get them to achieve at the grade level standard, as opposed to some risk, which is the middle category, the Tier 2. Some supplemental supports may be needed. A kid who's in the green, our low risk universal instruction is perfectly adequate for them to achieve at the grade level standards. Each one, what I do is I move you through the district first and then each of the buildings, so you'll see very similar kinds of looks. When you see this kind of a triangle, that is a look at where kids fell in terms of relative placements. And so you'll see, for example, that at the beginning of the year this year, we had 25% of our students fall in that red or at risk for Tier 3 category of needing lots of supports to meet the grade level standard. Remember, this is at the test at the beginning of the year, testing the achievement at that grade level. So it's a high standard as well, right? We moved that number from 25% of our kids to 18% in the middle of the year. Those kinds of movements is what we're looking for. We're looking for students to move from category to category. That demonstrates growth. And it's not just that they're moving from category to category, but the performance standard moves with them. So the standard at the beginning of the year isn't as high as the standard in the middle of the year, isn't as high as the standard at the end of the year. So moving from category to category is absolutely our goal. We moved down from 34% in universal to 52% of universal, for example. That's a good movement. Another way that we look at these data is, again, simply in colors. This is a 5-tier placement view as opposed to 3 tiers. So the green is still the same green that was in the first one. The red is still the same red that's in the first one, but we're actually able to divide that out a little bit and get a little more precise with our look at where kids are actually placing in the year. Important one here, I think, is the bottom two, from 13 to 10% and 12 to 8%. That 25% of our kids high risk to 18% of our kids high risk. That's a good movement. And the same is true for the green. We went from 34% in the green to 52% in the green. Good movements between relative placements. Another way to think about this is we're looking for high achievement and high growth from all kids. This is a relatively new chart for iReady. What they do is they divide the nation up into this chart up into 4 quadrants. The middle, it's kind of hard to see, but there's a line actually in the middle of that chart. 50 percentile and above is where we want all of our schools to perform, and in fact they did at winter. And we want better than 50% as typical growth, and they did. So all 3 of our schools that test with iReady scored in the high performance and high growth category. It's exactly what we want to happen. We also have these data by grade level, by disaggregated group. We drill into this data in lots of ways. This is just the 50,000-foot view for you. And there we go. When you look at the typical growth for students, our progress toward typical growth, if we were normal, would be 50% of our progress would be in the middle of the year. And in reading, district-wide, we have an average of 70, or median percent growth is 75%. That is very good. That is well above what's expected nationally. Okay? Last year, we are a little behind where we were in terms of typical growth, accelerated typical growth from last year. Last year, we were at 88%. Both very good, both very celebratory data, but we're a little bit behind where we were last year in terms of relative growth. When you look at the schools, this is where some stretch growths come into play. Notice the percentage of students improving placement, especially at Kreft and Titan Hill, is very high. 40% of the kids moving between placements at the middle school is also very, very good. Now, each building, and I'm going to go through this relatively quickly, but each building, the look is very similar. At Kreft, the sensitivity of this particular assessment is less likely to demonstrate very many kids in the highest risk category. And the reason for that is, by definition, it's 2 or more grade levels below. You can't be 2 or more grade levels below when you're a kindergartner, right? It's not sensitive enough to know school readiness that far below kindergarten. So these numbers, we would expect them to be better than the other buildings as a result. And our goal is to move kids, have more kids appear in those green categories as not needing additional supports from our MTSS program. So 22% in the Tier 1 universal to 63% is a huge gain. Okay? And this is the same basic view, only divided 5 ways. Notice there are only 3 students right now in that category of high risk, high need at Kreft, according to these metrics. And again, we went from 28 students at mid or above grade level to 159 students at Kreft. That's very, very good. By grade level, divided the same kind of way. And another thing that iReady does for us is gives us a little bit of a diagnostic look of how kids are doing. And these are the domains in reading that are tested at those levels for KN1. You notice our relative strengths and weaknesses are in this. A relative weakness for us right now is phonics and high frequency words. A relative strength is phonemic awareness. And that's kind of to be expected. That's what kindergarten and first grade stuff is all about, right? %, right at the district average for the number of the median percent progress toward typical growth in the building. And again, 50% is normal, 75% is very good. And that's a little quicker growth than last year at the same time. We were at 73%. By grade level, you can see that our kindergarten students are growing at a quicker pace than our first grade students, both in terms of annual stretch goals and in terms of progress toward the median growth. Titan Hill, very similar kinds of look. Lots of things to celebrate at Titan Hill. Moving from 25% of our kids needing extensive supports to 13% of our kids needing extensive supports is outstanding shift in relative placement in the building. This is that same look, only horizontal and divided 5 ways. So if we cut the number of kids 3 or more grade levels below at Titan Hill in half. Just great growth for those kids at the bottom of the spectrum. And you notice also the top grew from 15% to 28%. That's very good. Broken out by grade level, same kind of a look, fall to spring. Second grade fall to spring growth is outstanding. I would point that out. From 9% in the top category to 26% in the top category. None of the kids scored in the bottom category. And then relative strengths and weaknesses, we would expect at Titan Hill that phonemic awareness would drop off this list. In fact, you won't see very much at the middle school at all in terms of phonemic awareness. Students are already beyond that. Phonics, high frequency words are better scorers for us. Our staff right now is moving into letters, which is also a focus on phonics. And that will help on those bottom categories of students as well. (79% growth toward typical. Remember, 50% is normal. 79 is slower growth than what we experienced last year toward typical. Last year, Titan Hill was at 88% for reading. And then by grade level, notice 90% of our fourth graders have exceeded, have 90%, the median growth at fourth grade is 90% of a year's worth of growth. And we're in the middle of the year. It's outstanding. At the middle school, this middle school data is, I have to say that the standard for performance at the middle, especially at the upper grades, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, is much higher than at the other grades. So what you'll see is a tendency for the data to show that kids need more support to achieve the grade level standards. I had a meeting with the people from Kirkham Associates, which is the parent company that produces this assessment, last week, and we're looking at redoing the standards for cut scores for Iowa. What they did first with this was they correlated this to the NAEP testing, to an international standard of performance, and with the full intention of it being a very rigorous standard. But what it does by doing that is it over-identifies students in need of assistance as a result. So those are going to be looked at this year. I also told them, though, please don't disrupt the connection to the classroom when they do that. The iReady assessment has been a very good assessment for us, informing us what to do next with kids in the classroom. It doesn't do a very good job at some levels, at kindergarten and at 6th grade especially, of helping us figure out who needs help. Because the standard is either not discriminating enough at kindergarten or is too high. You have to score over the 52nd percent or something like that. It's a very high number in order to not be in the red at 6th grade. So you can be a perfectly normal student and have normal achievement in Iowa and in the nation and still be deemed by this assessment as in significant need of assistance. And the reason is because it's a different reason. There's a different reason behind the
And just to point out, we weren't the only school that had this concern about it, because Dave had orchestrated a kind of an Iowa-wide phone call, and there were several districts on there.
Yeah, Cedar Rapids and Eddyville-Blakesburg joined us in that conversation. And it's remarkable. We're trying to get them to do a correlation study. Instead of correlating this to NAEP or to the TIMSS assessment for math in the international realm, we want them to do this, a correlation study of the ISASP. Because one of the purposes of this in Iowa, for using as a screener, is to predict success on the ISASP. And right now, that correlation's not there. So the cut scores that they have, Cedar Rapids has found that like 40% of the students who score in that yellow category score proficient on the ISASP. Right, and so it's not a very good predictor for that. And so that's part of what we're doing now, is we're working with them to get a better handle on the correlation to Iowa and the expectations in Iowa as a result. Again, movement between categories is what we're looking for. And you notice the movement at the middle school is not quite as dramatic as at the elementary levels. Similar kinds of shifts, but just not as dramatic. And like I said, when students are older, phonemic awareness, phonics, and high-frequency words are not really tested as a normal part of this test. So kids test out of them very quickly and get on to informational texts, reading for comprehension. Vocabulary is the biggest stickler, if you will, as the children get older. Progress toward typical growth, 67%. Again, 50% is normal. Remember last year when you saw this presentation, we were at 125% of normal at the middle school in reading. It was a phenomenal year in reading. We're still having a great year in reading, but we're not at 125% of a year's worth of growth for a median kid. Our overall achievement is better, but our growth is, and it's still more than a year, but our growth isn't knocking the socks off it like it did last year. But 92% of the sixth grade growth at mid-year is phenomenal. Okay? When you look at math, it's very similar, very similar. I'm going to move quickly now because the numbers and the patterns are very similar. The shifts are pretty dramatic in math, district-wide. You notice we went from 222 students to 133 students, three or more grade levels below, and we went from 142 to 402 at or above grade level. Those shifts are exactly what we want to happen. Fewer kids in need of significant assistance, more kids thriving at the top of the system as well. Similar here in that all three schools were above the 50th percentile in terms of typical growth, and all three schools were near or above. I would say near because the middle school was slightly below. It was at the 45th percentile rank in relative performance to the national norm, with Titan Hill and Kreft being above the national norm. So again, two of our schools in the high quadrant, one of our schools in the low performance but high growth category. Median growth, about the same as we were last year, 62% of the median. Remember, 50% is typical. When you look at all three schools, we have 72%, 64%, 58%, and this is in math. It's very good. Again, patterns. Kreft's patterns in math are very similar to the patterns in reading. There we go. Huge shifts in the top. 25 students at or above grade level to 133 students at or above grade level. It's very good. And again, that's kind of what we expect at Kreft because of the effect of kindergarten. Kids come to school not necessarily at grade level, right? But very quickly, they learn very quickly at the lowest levels. And this again is math. And there you can see the placements from 8% to 40% of our students in the at or above grade level placements at kindergarten. It's very, very good growth. Relative strengths and weaknesses. These are, in math, they're more likely to be arbitrary because of the placement of the pacing of the curriculum in the classroom. So we may not have had much exposure to, in this case, numbers and operations. We may have had more about shapes and geometry at certain times of the year. So remember that math is more discrete around the content itself, so we'll have more fluctuations. 72%, there you go. 72% is right at pace with where we were last year in terms of growth at craft and math. 75% and 68%. 75% kindergarten is very, very good. In fact, progress toward the annual stretch goals at CREFT is also very good. Half of our students at CREFT have had improved placements in kindergarten. That's very good. Again, the shifts are very dramatic, from 24% at or above in the fall to 46% in winter. At the top end of the scale is very good. Only 25%, or only 25 students are 3 or more grade levels below at Titan Hill out of nearly 900 students, making a strong difference for them. Again, we disaggregate not just by grade level, but by free reduced lunch status, race ethnicity, tag students, special ed students, etc. Males and females also. Placement by domain at Titan Hill. Again, it gives us an idea of how does our curriculum and our pacing stack up with what's being tested and how it's being tested in this particular assessment. Typical growth, we're exceeding where we were last year at Titan Hill in math, 58 as opposed to 55%, very, very close. Not quite as dramatic of growth in math at Titan Hill. This is also our second year of implementation of illustrative math at Titan Hill. So there's still an implementation dip that's occurring. For middle school, this is our, there you go. This is our first year of full implementation of illustrative math at the middle school, so there's a significant implementation dip again. Teachers, we're still working on teaching strategies associated with illustrative math. But the shift is still dramatic, from 38% to 28% for students who need significant supports. Shifts are not quite as dramatic, but they are still on the positive side. Overall growth for middle school, 64%, which is about on par with where we were last year at 62%. It's very good. Remember, 50% is typical. I point out the middle school 8th grade math, greatly exceeding expectations in 8th grade math at 83% of our students, above the 50% median progress. So overall, we're making great shifts in terms of students moving to upper levels of relative placement, and I celebrate a few there in the dialogue. Some very good growth in both reading and math, but again, a reminder that it's not just about reading and math, that we're about so much more here at LC. We pride ourselves in dealing with the whole child, right?
Can you go back one slide? Do we know the students that are at the lower level?
Do we know who they are?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
In fact, the reports the teachers get divide their class up into various leveled groupings. And so it even provides then instructional supports try to move those kids to a next placement. Yes. Every teacher has access to their kids and where their kids scored. Absolutely, we do.
Any other questions?
Pretty technical report. Bottom line, it's very, very good news. More kids moving upward in terms of relative placement in a very challenging time with a challenging test. So,
Yeah, I'd assume as COVID gets behind us, the year-over-year progression through the grades will be more,
be more consistent.
yeah,
Yeah.
normalized. Yeah.
That's what we're hoping for, yeah. And remember that it's not like a ruler with equal numbers on it. Third grade math, for example, starts to get into abstraction very differently. And when certain kinds of content starts to play out for kids, that's when stretch really starts to happen for them. Yeah, and kids don't grow at the same rate every year even, right? You notice that with your children, I'm sure. Some years the growth is phenomenal. Other years it's like, come on, right? Sometimes that's a function of curriculum. Sometimes that's a function of socialization. Sometimes it's a function of interest. I mean, all kinds of things flow into that group. Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll go to our discussion items, 7.01, outdoor scoreboard replacement bids.
So you'll see that we did get a rebid back. Same company that submitted the last one. They are the ScoreVision provider in our area, and so not surprising it was the only one. But when the board denied it last time, I did have a conversation with them and said, "You're welcome to rebid. This is why we denied it. If we had a budget number, was nowhere near the budget number." They did come back. This is what they kind of consider their best and final at $568,070. So it's slightly above the estimated budget of $550. But if you were to, I'm sure that if we were to wait another year and say, you know what, we're going to wait another year, it's only going to rise in costs. So I think this is pretty close to the budget that we had, I talked about with Shive Hattery, and so my recommendation is to go ahead and accept it, and let's move on. Once again, iWestern will pay for 1/5 of it, and then the Booster Club has committed to helping us with the rest of it, so over a series of years. So,
Any questions?
I'd assume with this would come ad sales and everything else, right?
yeah, that's where they'll get their money from, is ad sales and everything else. Yeah, the inside scoreboard makes about $89,000 a year in ad sales, so they're anticipating similar revenue for the outdoor scoreboard. So
Who manages the ad sales? Is that
Booster Club,
Booster Club does it?
yeah.
Okay, I didn't know.
And then the kids are the ones that put together the ads for the scoreboard, and that is it called Media Productions class? Yeah. So they're the ones that actually put together the content for those companies' ads.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Great learning opportunity, and obviously the money goes to a good cause. So.
Any other questions?
You guys would all be invited to the first community movie that we play on it, so.
Okay. All right, 7.02, ratification of collective bargaining agreement with LCEA.
So I'm going to turn this over to Mrs. Reyes to talk about the agreement and kind of what it means for us.
Yes, so the LCEA came to us with their initial agreement, which included the $1,700 flat raise, which is a 2.68 overall package. This was within our scope of what we were looking to settle for as well. So our initial proposal back to them was the $1,700 flat raise to all staff. So they are allowed lateral movement for education, but there is no movement for steps, and the base amount will stay the same. They did ratify, I believe, with 93% approval. So we will move forward with this. This will also allow us to have our contracts out on March 15th. So then we have 21 days for them to be returned. So we should be in a good spot for knowing our staff that are returning or who are not returning as well.
And March 15th is the first day allowed by Iowa code for us to be able to give contracts out to certified staff. So it's the earliest it can possibly get out. I like that practice because then it helps our teachers know exactly, you know, what's going on next year, helps us know who we have coming back, and we're not scrambling, and not to say it never happens, but it's less likely we're scrambling in end of April, May to find somebody to fill a seat. So.
Any questions? All right, 7.03, presentation of Shive Hattery facility assessment findings.
Yep. So we have our good friends Brent and Michael here to talk with us about some of the findings that they had.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, guys. I appreciate having us tonight. So I'll give kind of just an overview of what we've been tasked to do, get started on the slides, and then Michael's kind of our content leader, knows a lot of the fine details a little bit more effectively. So we were tasked with a facilities conditions, facilities assessment that would lead into the master plan and kind of the next steps that Dr. Hastings talked about. And so really this is the fact-finding stage is what this is. This is going through each of the facilities, taking every photo we possibly can, compiling, organizing, and then starting to really look at the technical aspect of those from a condition. You know, what condition is it in? Is it in a poor condition, decent, or better? Is it lifespan starting to expire? Are we nearing, or, you know, is that something we need to plan for? So kind of looking at the first slide here, we've kind of given you what we talked. Red, yellow, green is the color scheme. However, we kind of look at it from a critical, so that's like a right now thing. That's something that maybe is something you've known about for a while. Maybe it's something that's already in the works getting fixed, or there's some life safety considerations, and it's really the things that are like, has to be right now, right? So think 0 to 2 years or less than 2 years type thing. And in the plan, we have 0 to 5 in there, but really that's to start assuming that this is going to need repair, replacement, consideration, and it's not a when, it's not an if, it's a when type situation, right? So it's going to have an issue, or it is going to need repair, or it's going to need an update or improvement to really make sure that the kids are getting the best out of what they can. And then the maintain, so there's always things that are going to expire, as is life, right? So your HVAC equipment has a lifespan on it, your electro equipment has a lifespan on it, pipe has a lifespan on it. Some of those things may be pretty old. However, some of the facilities that we have here in the school district are starting to age and have gone through some repairs or some pieces. So we kind of looked at some different Band-Aids or some different aged items and said, okay, maybe we need to take this into consideration for the 5+. So with that in mind, I'll turn it over and let Michael kind of go for, start with the high school.
Yes, so as you can see, here are some pretty pictures of your school. Probably a little bit less than pretty, but you can just kind of see visually kind of some of the things that we identified. I believe we have documentation for more, but these are just kind of the highlights just to give you guys a brief taste of what is going on. So as you're aware, this is the newest educational facility in the district, originally constructed in 2001. It is 1/3 of all the building footage that you have in your facilities. So looking at some of the critical things in there, looking at replacing the roof, repairing we did know that there was some warranty items on there as well. Also looking at enhancing, trying to bring up your main entrance to kind of meet current trends of what school security is these days. Then you can also kind of see over here in the plan and the maintain, a lot of exterior items, kind of the wear and tear of a 20-year-old building is starting to show its age. So
I should stop us real quick and just kind of take a step back. So if there's any questions about specific items, high-level items, please stop us. Again, fact-finding, data stage, and then we'll figure, the real heavy, detailed priority stuff later. But if there's anything that we can bring emphasis to, we're more than happy to do so.
yes. So one of the things that we probably didn't, that I should have shared earlier is this is probably the doom and gloom report. Looking at your facilities, you do have great facilities. We're just pointing out all the bad things right now. So
Yeah, we're in the position to be the bad guy and really to, kind of help bring light to those things so we can start to figure out ways to remedy those or do other things.
yes, critical. Yes. So that's kind of on the architectural and building envelope. If you look at the site and building engineering, as you're probably very well aware, pavement restoration, traffic and queuing is huge at the high school. You can also see that there's, with 20-year-old building, all your mechanical equipment is starting to age out. So you can kind of see we've tried to put those into 3 different areas, kind of space them out to help manage that financial piece moving forward. Then you can also look at the planning. One of the things that we definitely found is you're kind of in a low-lying area with your district. While everything does drain, it doesn't drain probably very quickly compared to other sites. So just wanted to point out that we would look at improving stormwater improvements. So if we do any additions or any other improvements, you would start seeing some stormwater requirements start to kick in. So we kind of put some, identified some cost for that as well. And then also with the replacing the fire alarm, replacing the lighting, that kind of gets tied into replacing the new ceilings in the space. So to bundle those, that's usually a good time to bundle those. So we want to make sure that if we're going to open up the ceiling, that we fix everything in that space versus opening it up multiple times.
And we completely understand there are some large numbers that you'll see on this report, most certainly. There are other ways to go about remedying things. You can break them into phases, right? So that's why we tried to break it into the red, yellow, green, critical plan, maintain, but also just know that if you build one big thing, it's a lot more cost effective than if you build 6 medium-sized things that fit the same space. So with lighting, if you replace all the lighting in one full swoop, it obviously is more impactful potentially to the curriculum, to the students, potentially to the phasing. So we'd have to really consider the time of year. But if you break it up, you're going to pay more over the time, and you may, by the time you finish up the completion, you may be replacing other ones in the back end, right? So we've taken those into consideration, and certainly understand money doesn't grow on trees, especially for school districts. So we're trying to show the bad news again. We're trying to show the big picture, but just know that's in our minds.
Yeah.
The pavement restoration, is that total redo?
Correct, yeah. So thanks for bringing that up, Brian. So the pavement restoration, the reason we separated pavement restoration from traffic and queuing is the school district had a pavement assessment done here in 2021. So what we did was we reviewed that as well as reviewed the site ourselves. And in general, that was in line with what we would have thought. And as part of that report, they had it broken down into mill and overlay, an asphalt overlay, or some patch and repair. And what we thought for this report was the most appropriate was of complete reconstruction and replacement with concrete. Now, that's certainly something, again, from a discussion standpoint that we can have. We'd like to do this, we'd like to phase it this way, we'd like to construct it this way. But to answer your question directly, we went full replacement with concrete.
Okay. Where is that, you're talking about the high school parking lot?
Yes.
Where is it the worst?
So,
all over or just?
Yeah, so it's a tough one, right? So it is, there are some areas that are, I'm going to say, less worse, but in large part, it will, as soon as you start to begin to piecemeal that parking lot, I believe you're going to start to see crumbling of the asphalt pretty quickly where you have some really bad areas, you start to touch that and everything around it's going to start to fail as well. Partially because of the age, partially because of the usage. There's a lot of traffic that goes in and around that, obviously with all the events you guys host. So I think the worst, it seems like there's probably, I was gonna say there's like 3 to 4 bigger, medium to bigger sized pockets. The rest is in probably not great shape.
Yeah, it has everything from puddling issues to just flat out broken down. And the reason why I asked on the pavement, hopefully, God willing, we have a lot more use of that parking lot with
Sure.
the auditorium. So it's only going to get more wear and tear than what it already sees with, you know, predominantly just school, football, basketball games. You know, we're layering on even more traffic on that thing.
Great place to do cookies as well. Lots.
Yeah, I heard that this on the way in, actually.
Just kidding out there. Don't do cookies in our
Yes.
parking lot. We're gonna start ticketing you.
Yeah, most of it. So asphalt really wasn't the best material to lay down.
Yeah, asphalt has its places in construction and in our sites. Here in Iowa, we have such a strong change in weather that it is more impacted, I would say, or it's harder to maintain from an impact standpoint. Concrete does have a longer lifespan. Again, you need to maintain it. You got to fill your joints. You've got to keep those things sealed. But in large part, if you can keep your joints sealed, then you can avoid settlement. Your concrete's going to last a lot longer. Now, you do pay for that a little bit more on the upfront. However, in the past, I'd say 10-ish years, those numbers have evened out a little bit more. The price from an oil standpoint with asphalt and the different mixes have evened out. You'll still pay a little more premium for concrete, but it is better for parking lots. It's kind of what we've seen. Roads where you need to have fast construction, mill and overlays. There's a variety of solutions that have come about. Our best historical piece has come with concrete, though. It's just been more foolproof and allowed for longer lifespans. So the things, as a civil engineer, the things that don't matter to a lot of people are underground or a pavement until it really matters, and that's when a pipe burst or concrete fails. So the longer we can get that to last, the better, so we can concentrate on some of the other amenities that are maybe within the classrooms or somewhere else.
The lot would have been better with about a 4 to 6 inch base of limestone underneath of it.
Yes, so I did not review the cross section, but if that does not have a rock base under it, I would tend to agree, yes.
Oh, it does not.
So if it was built on just straight up subgrade is what we would call that, so just dirt, for lack of a better term.
Wet dirt.
Going the wrong way. You're leading me down a dark path here. Yes, all bad things go and getting worse. Yep, 100%. Now, one of the on the flip side, to get a little technical here, in order to have rock underneath it, you need to have some sort of either a dirty rock, so it'd be with the fines, so you can snatch and build on it and compact it right, or some sort of clean rock, but you need a subdrain system. And given the flatter nature of it, it may have been difficult. That may have been one of the considerations. But yeah, holistically, we want to, right now we make this assumption of cross section and from a cost standpoint, but we'd really want to dive in and probably given the scale that you guys have here, not only on the high school but the entire facility, looking holistically at the campus, is we probably want to take a look at a geotech to really get an idea of what kind of soils you guys are dealing with and really kind of restart from a parking lot, as well as anything else that we're looking at structurally.
Dave remembers. We were here. Yeah, I can tell you anything you want to know about the parking lot. You don't have to do any investigation. I'll just tell you what's wrong.
Tell me.
with
All right, I like that.
it.
I like that.
If I said our parking lot was value engineered, would you understand that?
I would.
Okay.
I would. Yes. Sadly, yes.
We're there. Okay.
Got it.
Thank you.
You bet.
Are there any other questions related to the high school before we move on to the middle school?
I assume the warranty work is already in the works.
Yeah, it is. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And one other thing we should mention. So as part of this, we obviously we don't want you guys to sit here and listen to us talk for 8 hours. That would be terrible for all of us involved. Maybe I'd have fun because I like talking technical stuff, but there is a report that we put together from a technical aspect that has a little bit more well-defined, individualized items. It is a lot of black and white text, so it is tedious by all accounts, but just know that that does exist. So this information is created and will be in a location that can be kind of referenced at a later date type thing. And this is kind of our presentation mode here.
Yep, and that's what we talked about the board work session for. Tonight's kind of an overview, so you guys can have an idea, so our community can have an idea of the things we're talking about. And then the work session will be more digging into it, trying to discuss, what are some priorities as we move forward by the board, what is a process to make sure that we're receiving input from the correct people, and then kind of how do we want to make that final decision as far as which direction do we go? Because, I mean, there's a lot of things on here, and you know, it's only time and money to fix stuff, but we don't have a lot of either. So trying to figure out how to make what's most important.
So moving on to the middle school, you can see, if you are unaware, this used to be the original high school. It's approximately 160,000 square feet of building. With the oldest parts of the building are over 50 years old. And it's definitely apparent that this is the oldest building. As you can see, there's just a lot of things on here that are identified as repairs. You can see in the image. So this is just a sampling of that. So looking at some of the architectural and building envelope items, once again, looking at replacing the roofs, we are very aware that there are some leaks in several of the buildings. Looking at also adding additional roof drains, so best practices, so that if you do have a lot of freeze thaw, a lot of ice, a lot of water buildup, we can get that additional water off the roof to keep that building from collapsing as well. Looking at a lot of life safety code improvements related to the stairs and ramps throughout the facility. If you've spoken with your facilities director, Jim Edelman, he has mentioned probably about the sewer replacement and all the challenges going on at in the lower level of the school. Looking under the planning side, just want to kind of point out there's a lot of opportunities. You know, there is that $4 million item in there for daylighting improvements. Just trying to enhance how much light gets brought into the space to help with the value of learning. There are a lot of studies out there that talk about letting that natural light in. We're talking about 20% of natural light trying to get into those rooms. Helps with the circadian rhythms, helps with focus, allows students to look out, see the cloud go over the sky and over the sun, allows their brains to reset and then get back to focusing on what the teacher's instructing. So just kind of put a large number on that just to address some of those items. Once again, looking at upgrades of the restrooms and locker rooms, and then we did identified several items in the auditorium, from broken chairs to the storage to just kind of, it's had a good life. It's done a lot of things. We just need to give it some little TLC to bring that up to speed. Then once again, similar to the high school, under that maintain, new ceilings, flooring, and paint. And then if you look at the site and building engineering, once again looking at replacing some lighting and then some of those mechanical things that happen above the ceiling to be efficient with the space. So if you're here on a drop-off or pickup time, as you can see, the traffic queuing and the pavement, that's quite a challenge for district staff. So we have some allocated funds to try to get that to correct some of those items. Once again, oldest building in the district, so that you have a lot of outdated equipment, trying to bring that up to current trends, making it easier for your staff to do the things they need to do without having a dedicated person just looking at equipment. So, any questions related to the middle school?
One of the things that I just want to point out is, you know, some of the things that we had questions about, you know, as we start looking at programming, expanding CTE, expanding early childhood, expanding daycare, expanding preschool, you know, those career and technical ed sides. I know that one of the things I want to point out, or even expanding space, this doesn't really talk about any of that. So I just wanted to point that out. All these numbers are just to take our current facilities and make them whole again. So, so if we're thinking any additions or anything like that, that would be something that's discussed, you know, after this meeting, as far as here's all we have going on in our buildings right now, and then that's one of the things next week in the board work session. That would be an opportunity then for these guys to provide some opportunities beyond just restoration to, as we continue to grow and develop as a district or have other focuses or priorities or responding to the needs of our parents and students and staff, that they're going to present some other opportunities as well. So,
Great point. Thank you.
Yes. All right, moving on to Titan Hill. So if you're into details, this was originally constructed in 1975. It also houses the district competition size pool in there. It's approximately 137,000 square feet. You can see in those images, if you compare this to the other schools, this school's doing a lot better than the middle school or some of the other schools, and that's kind of apparent when you look at the list of things. There's fewer items on this list. So looking at the architectural and building envelope, some things to point out. There are a few sidewalks that are related to the egress of the building that go nowhere. They open out and there's grass, so that's kind of a life safety concern that we'd love to get corrected for the district. There's also a lot of exterior degradation going on, especially at the pool area. If you haven't been to the south side of the pool, on the exterior side, you're going to start seeing the face of the concrete, of the clay bricks, starting to pop off and delaminate from itself. There's also, if you look closely at the steel, outside steel, the lintels, the doors, you'll see a lot of rustification going on as well. One of the other things inside the pool building is the actual mechanical system. Right now it is bringing in 100% fresh air all the time, regardless if it's a 90-degree day or a negative 20-degree day. It's bringing in that temperature, and then it's trying to then temper it, but it's based off of more of the system is based off of controlling the humidity, not the primary focus of temperature in there. So once again, looking at some of those planning items, looking at managing the roof replacement, getting some additional access to the different roofs without having to need to have your maintenance staff use a transportable ladder. And then once again, under maintain, once again, kind of the interior finishes. Looking at the site and the other building engineering items, you can also see there's some minor ADA improvements. And then you can also see there is a mixture of pavement restoration. So if you look at portions of it, some of it is concrete, some of it is asphalt. But once again, trying to get that into a maintainable state for your district staff. Looking at stormwater improvements, while you are on the hill, if you look on the north side, there is a pretty good swale that kind of runs through the playground and then eventually gets to run down the hill downstream.
And I can touch briefly on that topic from a stormwater standpoint. So there's just some flat spaces. You do have good flow ultimately as it gets to the detention basin, but just cleaning up some of the areas so to make more effective playground spaces and things like that. And the other thing I really wanted to mention on this from a high level, Dr. Hazing just alluded to the bigger picture or additions or considerations in the future. All those other schools have opportunities. They may or may not be the best opportunities depending on the topic we want to talk about from additions. Titan Hill is way more restricted. So the site that it sits on is in the corner and it's really kind of tucked back in the corner, which is great from a functionality exactly as it is today. However, any considerations to additional needs to that facility would be difficult to pull off, not only from a phasing of a curriculum standpoint, but also from a where you're going to go. So it's going to go west, and it's going to go, or it's going to go, yes, it's going to go on the west side, and it's going to ultimately get right into your queuing, your drop off, you picked up. So that school, while we're thankful it has a little less on the list than maybe some of the others, it does have some other considerations as far as the future and the bigger picture from a curriculum standpoint.
And then once again, just adding under the maintenance thing, the broken record of once you replace the interior finishes, that's a great time to replace the interior lighting and upgrade the fire alarm system in there.
Let's go back to one thing on plan, actually. Let's go back to the
Yes.
geothermal. So you do have an existing geothermal out there, and it is working. We don't believe there are significant concerns with that. However, it is not working at the full capacity to encompass the entire school. I think, do you have the number?
Correct. Yeah, so basically, when the last addition was added on, the geothermal system was not large enough to handle that addition. So we've enlarged, we have identified that as a improvement, get it large enough so that it can actually go to that 100% to the most efficient system it can be. So it's not, you excuse me, you put a lot of money into creating the system, and now we just got to get it over the hump to make it the most efficient as possible.
Any questions on Titan Hill?
Okay.
Just curious, how many more ton are you figuring on the geo to do the whole school? Any idea?
We would need to have our mechanical engineer.
You saw my head snap. I was
Yep.
hoping he knew better. Yeah. So,
Nope.
so we do have a mechanical engineer on staff. We have multiple, but specific to this project, who looked at that and did the calc. So we'd be happy to we can share that at the board session and kind of dive into those details if you're interested in that. You just caught the two non-experts in geothermal. Well, here today with you, unfortunately. We left the smart guys at home.
I know what it is.
Oh, you know how much is
No,
needed?
he's just messing with you.
Gotcha. Okay.
Smart that you didn't try to answer right now, because he would have corrected. He's
I
looking.
kind of know what it is.
Fair enough,
And
okay.
I kind of know where it is.
Got it.
So, but the ERC is also on the geothermal, this building.
Okay.
Okay.
That's good to know. So we'll take that information back. We'll kind of brush
Okay.
up with the mechanic. We'll see what he thinks. We appreciate that. Yeah.
Yes.
We will definitely have more questions on that as we continue, I'm sure.
Okay. I'll help you out if I can.
All right, moving on to Kreft Primary School. As you can see through the pictures, the two big things is masonry and then interior finishes. So if you were to take those 12 pictures and boil it down to those two different things. So a few notes. As you are probably well aware, this is the one educational learning center that is away from the rest of the other ones. It is 63,000 square feet of building. And there was one more thing that I was going to tell you about, but I forgot. So we'll just look at the critical items. So once again, looking at that secure entrance, while you do have the A-phone system to buzz in and then get you into the school office, there is a way for people to bypass that system once you're in that vestibule. So just wanted to make sure that that is taken care of so that students are safe. Looking at also some replacement of the roof, repairing masonry, and then also making some interior upgrades into that space to start planning to make that just a little bit more fresh in space, make it a positive learning environment for those students. And then under maintain, once again, the ceilings and flooring, and then we did add casework in there. A lot of the casework in those classrooms are starting to have some heavy wear and tear on them. So we've identified those.
So then looking over at site and building engineering, one of the big things, while it is separated from the campus, sometimes that can be okay if you get some of the other amenities. However, you've got the dead end of Renner, so traffic and queuing has really a singular way in, singular way out, and everybody needs to ultimately use that same path along with all the residential in the area. I think you guys are more than aware of that, so I'm just reiterating. However, that does come with its own set of kind of cross to bear to try to solve that. So you're not going to be able to solve Renner unless you are able to work with the city, or the city is able to work with themselves to be able to develop to the west, or kind of find an alternative means out of there. The other thing you could do is try to do something on site. You could try to route around, but with that becomes additional safety considerations. You start to lose what awesome green space you have and playground space you have, and start to look at some of the other things that you maybe have to give up in order to really kind of correct that traffic and queuing. There are some excuse me, ADA improvements as well, kind of a common theme there. That's just general sidewalks, that's stoop issues, that's corrects, that's maybe detectable warnings when you're in there, signage, a variety of things is what ADA improvements can mean. And then on the critical, you do have some HVAC equipment that's on the more critical path here and starting to see the end of its lifespan and needs some help. From a plan standpoint, same thing, pavement restoration on every single one of these from a site standpoint. It is in less bad shape comparatively than even the high school, but it does need some attention. And the longer that goes, the more expensive it and the bigger the problem becomes from a correction standpoint. Stormwater, so you really don't have significant issues from a stormwater standpoint. To our knowledge, there's not flooding issues of the building. You do have some detention on site along Renner there in between the larger parking lot and the main kind of queuing entrance, but it's pretty small. So the field out back, it gets wet. It's very little slope, so there's just some consideration to maybe trying to maximize what you have and make that a little bit more functional. And then from a plan standpoint, just looking at the next step from an HVAC. And then to Michael's spiel about the other facilities, you've got your lighting, your fire alarms, and then your aging HVAC, just in general, kind of keeping those in mind, understanding that they don't last forever. Anything else on CREPT?
And then the last area we spoke about was the general athletic facilities. So this is the building located just south of the stadium. You can see that this area has been heavily has some heavy abuse, wear and tear on it. So some of our recommendations is basically a complete gut and overhaul of the building, including all mechanical, electrical, fire protection, and then kind of when we look at that master planning thought process, what could that space be used, and so then get appropriate interior finishes to accommodate those needs. And then Brent, I don't want to.
Yeah, so then the reason we kind of discussed a couple different paths here, and we originally started with building. Well, we changed that to facilities because we wanted to kind of higher level look at everything. I know you guys, or we know you guys have a lot of action and activity working on there. Obviously, we talked about the scoreboard here earlier tonight. You know, there's a variety of things that have happened out in these facilities that continue to stay up, which is awesome. There's a couple other things that maybe as the bigger picture starts to evolve and you're able to look at it, we take into consideration something like replacing the tennis courts. It's that nice asphalt swear word that we like to bring up again. That doesn't last forever, right? So there's a replacement associated with that to make sure you have a safe playing surface. We've got all the storage facilities out there in the different sheds. Combining those, we would think would be a practical idea, and really kind of taking a bigger picture look at what the facility needs from a storage standpoint, centralizing those, or we're really trying to make those a little more functional or dual purpose. We talked about ADA and pavement improvements, so you've got your main entrance. We talked earlier about the high school, the main parking lot. Well, associated with that would be kind of creating a greater plaza area, or maybe a main entrance that has a little more cohesion to it to try to bring everybody, invite everyone in. And then we put other miscellaneous site improvements. What that includes is, we talked about baseball. Baseball is always going to have some improvements. Softball is always going to have improvements. I know there's some bullpens and some dugouts worth considering. And just the general upkeep, right? Nothing is perpetual, or everything is perpetual as far as maintenance goes, and nothing lasts forever. So knowing that those are upcoming, we tried to put some considerations to the short-term stuff, knowing that long-term there's a lot of other things that could come with it. And as sports evolve and uses change, you guys host a lot of things and want to continue to host more things. It's great for the school district. You guys do an awesome job. Those needs will kind of rear their heads and help kind of uncover some other things that you guys will need to take into consideration. So with that, it's kind of the culmination point as far as today goes. So anything that we can answer for you guys today, we're more than happy. And if we're not able to answer, we'd love to take it back, get an answer for you, and hopefully keep this conversation going.
I guess, is there anything that you guys would like to see differently or in more detail when we meet for that board work session? So, like I said, they'll come up with some other options as far as anytime we talk about facilities, we want to talk about any opportunities beyond general upkeep and maintenance, you know, and talk about what's maybe out there for opportunities for us to kind of take advantage of or pursue. Maybe some different ways of doing business when it comes to anything from elementaries to middle school, high school, in regards to programming our athletic fields and trying to ensure that they are in a safe and functional environment for not only our players but our spectators as well. So they're going to come up with some ideas for us next week to just kind of expand upon what you guys heard tonight. So
yeah, I think for that conversation, I think it's important to bring in any kind of the enhancements to the curriculum
things that are needed that we've talked about.
Yep.
So we can talk about trade-offs of what you do now versus later. Then I think we do have to talk about, just some of the real trade-offs, because some of these price tags are pretty expensive to maintain and do upgrade, and, is there other things that we could do a little bit differently? The one thing I think that is important is, it's always bugged me, is coming out of the football stadium, we empty that stadium right onto the road, and having a much safer way, because that quickly fills up with cars. So that goes along with that whole parking lot nightmare that we've got brewing. So
To clarify, you're talking about the private drive on the west side of the field.
well, I'm just talking about when you exit a football game, you go right onto the drive.
There's 1,000 cars that try to leave the parking lot at once.
And they're only going one of two directions, out that back loop, which we've talked about how nobody really likes, but it's a necessary evil.
Yep.
Or they're going the other direction, and we're just dumping all those people
Sure.
mixed in with that flow of traffic.
Yeah, so you've got your traffic and queuing issues from a drop-off and pickup, day-to-day school, and then you've got the considerations for,
Yeah.
hey, when are we hosting an event, right? And
Yeah.
we want to continue to do that. How
I
can we
think
mitigate
it's
that?
best practice to separate pedestrian from auto, right? So-
Yeah, right, exactly, because everybody's got to leave and cross the main drives. You're exactly right.
So, but, continuing to have some of those trade-off discussions, I think is important.
Great
So-
comments, thank you.
Yep.
Well, since our HVAC in most of our buildings seems to need some work, is it time to seriously look at Geo for every building?
Potentially, I think what we'd want to do, and I assume you guys had done this on the last rendition, is run an ROI on that. Now, what we're seeing from a Geo standpoint is, 15 years ago, the numbers really just weren't working their way out as often as maybe individuals would like or clients would like. But today, the numbers are getting a little more effective. So I think I would say everything's on the table, is what I would say. And Geo would be definitely included with that.
I know when we did Titan Hill, 7-year payback
Okay, perfect.
on our investment. And that's why at one time we had looked at Kraft on doing a Geo down there.
Sure.
The conditions are right down there to be able to do it.
Yeah, and that's the first step, is right, is
And
do
be,
you have the appropriate
and be
conditions.
efficient, if we have the room for a field. So that's why I'm
Yeah,
interested in looking at that, because we had that 7-year payback with the way natural gas prices have gone now.
sure.
It comes and goes. There's a time when it's not worth the payback, and maybe this is a time to be looking at that again.
Yeah, that's great feedback. We'll keep that in mind, and we'll kind of keep that on the table. I think everything is on the table, though, to be really honest. Because
Okay.
I think, Brian kind of alluded to, seeing some of the bigger numbers, I think there's no one aha moment that solves this super easily. So I think we need to keep everything on the table and really discuss that with the board and the committees.
And I think Mid-America Energy has incentives to do this.
Correct. Yes.
They can
Always
help.
nice.
We would like for them to help.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I think what they'll come with is they'll come up with those opportunities for us next week, and we can have kind of conversations about, what are some things we want to look deeper into, and then what are some things that we want to potentially present to a group of community members and a group of staff, and then coming up with some names for, who we want to be, who we think would be good representation on our community members. So looking for a kind of a wide variety of people with, parents or the students in the school, don't have students in the school, people who live and own businesses here, people who commute. So I think it's important to get some general feedback on that. I also know there's a lot of questions out there as far as, everything from, how can we alleviate some of the traffic at our schools, at all of the schools, which we talked about that wayfinding and restoration for their pavement. And then also looking at how can we expand for, like I mentioned earlier, CTE, career and technical ed opportunities, daycare, preschool. So they'll bring up some good options next week.
If nothing else, thank you guys. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
And you're not doom and gloom. You're just critical.
All right, this is the second time during our agenda that we take comments and suggestions from anyone in the audience or anyone online listening would like to type something in to address the board.
Yep, it looks like we have one. Looks like Bob Hendricks asked, do they look at utility credits associated with lighting improvements? That's absolutely one of the things that we are already, within our maintenance team, we are already, as we have ballast go out, we're just taking care of one room at a time and switching over to LED, and we are able to submit those in for rebates. So we're already taking a look at some of those credits. I think what these guys are talking about is doing it more on a mass scale to get better pricing, to get that all kind of included. Our guys are good at doing it, but it takes them a while to get one classroom done, and we have hundreds of classrooms. So if at the rate our guys are doing it now, we could potentially be done by the time I retire. So it was a few years away. So, but and that's not a slight on our guys. We just have that many rooms to do. So one of the things to talk about too, and one of the things that wasn't necessarily mentioned in there is furniture replacement. We talk about furniture as part of our curriculum, but we also talk about as part of our facilities. And usually when we build a new school building, we get all new furniture, which now means that a lot of our furniture in our school buildings is 20 or 30 or 30 plus years old. And we do replace that furniture on a cycle. But once again, if we have 250 classrooms and we're replacing 10 classrooms a year, by the time it's, or even less than that actually, replace about 6 classrooms a year. By the time it's time for that classroom to have new furniture, it's been about 30 years. And when you do a school and you do it all at once, some of that furniture on a cycle is going to be 50 years old if we don't do it in big chunks. So so that's just something else to consider. It's as we move forward, coming up with a plan that's going to help us position our schools to be able to serve our students and our community and our staff in the best way possible will be going to take a lot of planning. So.
Okay, we'll go on then to action items. 9.01, approval of outdoor scoreboard replacement bid.
Madam President,
Mr. Houston.
I move to approve the scoreboard replacement bid from Digital Scoreboard for $568,070.
Second.
And we have a second. Any discussion? Vote, please.
Mr. Rylage,
Yes.
Mr. Houston,
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mrs. Shuffle.
Yes. 9.02, ratification of collective bargaining agreement with LCEA.
Madam President,
Mr. Houston.
recommend we approve the salary agreement with the LCEA as presented for the 2023 to 2024 school year.
Second.
Any discussion? Vote, please.
Mr. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Rylage,
Yes.
Mr. Houston,
Yes.
Mrs. Shuffle.
Yes. Items of interest, future board meetings. We will have a board meeting, or a work session, February 28th, 2023 at 6 o'clock. If you know you cannot make it, please let Brett know. And then our regular board meeting will be March 20th. Is that?
Yep. 'Cause the first
Okay,
week
there's
is
spring break. That's what I was
yeah.
gonna say. I thought there was a break in there.
Yeah, that's why we have to do the work session on a separate night, because we just can't, we need to
Yeah.
kind of get on top of this rather than wait till the March 20th date.
Okay. And anything else?
What time are we doing the work session at again?
I have it down for 6 o'clock. Does that work for everybody?
Do we want to go a little earlier?
I'm free all day. It doesn't matter to me if it's 5, 6, 7.
Okay.
Just leave ample time to get. I'm planning on bringing something to eat because it's going to be a while.
And for work sessions, we usually do provide something to eat for the board, so you should be good to go. But okay, I'll reach out to the board members. We'll put it tentatively for 6. We really don't have to have that time until we post it.
Right.
So I'll just make sure. If we can start earlier, that's great. Do you guys have any, qualms?
Earlier's better, but
Okay.
later is perfectly fine too, so whatever
Okay.
works.
I just think it's going to be a longer meeting, just
It will be a long meeting,
Yeah.
yeah.
As those are live stream.
Yeah, we don't do 4-hour long live streams.
Right. Okay, anything else? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You can stay. Thank you very much.